Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Podcast, aptly named, don't you think, Austin?
It's my favorite podcast. It's my favorite name for a podcast.
And there you go. He's chiming in. I didn't even totally introduce him. It's Boston. You know him as Austin Ward, or maybe it's Austin. I know him as Boston Ward.
That might work.
Here we are, Boston. The college football season just ended, didn't it?
Man, for 2 months, that really felt like a long time without football to me.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that spring ball is back, and it is kind of, it's funny because I was writing about the spring preview the other day. I was like, it's only been 2 months since the Fiesta Bowl. It feels so much longer. And Ryan Day said that the other day. It was like, well, there's guys that are injured because they've only had 8 weeks to rehab, and they couldn't have surgery until early January.
A lot of guys get a little snip, a little tuck here and there, et cetera.
It's like, what, from that perspective, you're right. It hasn't actually been that long.
Yeah, and but it is crazy because I wish we could watch every practice. I mean, I'll be honest, because I used to get to watch every practice way back when, ladies and gentlemen, back when I first started covering it in the olden days. But back in the last century, and like I told John Cooper one time, I see him more during football season and during spring training than I see my wife, which was true. But now, boy, these chances to watch an entire practice or just give you glimpses into what's going on, you can really glean a lot from it. We're going to get to watch 3 plus the spring game. One's already in the books, but just my takeaway from the other day, and I don't want to get into that because we've already had a couple of 3 moments, video moments on LettermenRow.com. About what we saw in practice and stuff, but just in a particular sense, I just see moments when I look out there and I can almost imagine sort of the pressure some players are feeling. Either it's their first time on a true practice field with Ohio State. Yeah, they've been working out in the off-season program, but now you got the helmets on. Pretty soon you'll have the shoulder pads on, and you'll be practicing real football, and that's when you can show that you belong where you are. Not only belong where you are, but that you belong to be on the playing field. And there's a lot of pressure there that people don't understand because, these guys come into Ohio State when they're recruited thinking they're going to play at the next level, meaning the National Football League.
Yeah.
But first you got to prove yourself on this level. And suddenly, you've got, youngsters out there like a Paris Johnson, and he is a youngster, even though he's a big youngster. He's a Husky. But you've got him next to like a Josh Myers, or a Thayer Munford, and those are grown as, to pardon an Urban Meyer euphemism, those are grown-ass men.
Yeah. And
you're right there next to them, and you're trying to prove your worth. And you're on the defensive line, you're trying to do the same things. So with that said, if I had a mascot kind of player for how important this spring is for him in particular, it would be Demario McCall.
A familiar name.
Yeah, and the reason I brought that up is because we were talking about that a year ago, and we were talking about that a year before that, maybe.
Before that, yep.
And yet you look out there, and one of the guys that impressed you from that first practice, a guy who seemed to embrace the moment and then take hold of it and seize the moment, was Demario McCall. And because they're trying to figure out a way, where does he fit? Is he a slot receiver now? Are you going to have to move him back and be a running back? Because the running back situation at the moment, which is the first week of March, seems dire. I mean, it's a long time between now and the opener against Bowling Green. But, I don't know if that caught your attention or not. I know it did because I brought it up to you.
Well, I get so many questions about Demario McCall. It's going on however long I've been doing Question of the Day at stops before Lettermen Row.
Yeah.
Then I've written more words and taken more questions about him than probably any player at Ohio State in the last 5 years. He is a player that is fascinating to people outside the program.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I've never really understood it, but he had, people latched on to the social media, motorbike pictures. And when he's been interviewed, he does have a very engaging personality and a lot of confidence in himself. Those are 2 things that generally endear yourself, to media members, to fans, other former players that we've talked to. I've had tons of conversations with Beanie Wells where he wants Demario to have the football. He loves what he can do. Evan Spencer has broke him down on Buck IQ numerous times for how he could help in the passing game. And, a running back likes him, a wide receiver likes him. you've seen Ohio State and the coaching staff try to find packages and way to use him. I think the problem with Demario McCall has always been that he can do so many things, at an above average level, but he's never been an elite player at any one of them. And some of that has been an injury concern multiple times. Some of it has been, I think, maybe the fact that Ohio State has jostled him back and forth from positions and hasn't allowed him to train in just one area. Another part of it is that he's continued to have issues with ball security. And you ask if he stood out to me, and I was watching him right off the bat. He was out there returning punts, and I know that it's one small sample size in one day, but he put one on the ground. And yeah. I noticed that because I'm always watching Demario McCall so that the next time I'm asked about him, I can say what I've seen.
And but so did Garrett Wilson.
Absolutely. And some of it is they might hit the ceiling.
Yeah.
But the touchdown at the end of practice from C.J. Stroud, contested. It was a great throw from Stroud. But McCall had to make an adjustment to turn around. He had decent coverage on him.
Yes.
Go up and make a play, come down with it in the end zone. I'm going to remember it. I stood right there, and I'm not going to forget about it. You've said it about him a bunch of times, that the light could come on.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes 5 years. We thought it might be year 4 for him. He made the play, and it happened, and it counts.
Yeah.
And no, it was not in a game, but he's got 14 more of these, and he might have to face a decision.
But you touched on it. I mean, sometimes when they in real games, when it's sort of been his turn or his shot, either there's been an injury involved or the dropped kickoff at one point, which made a game into a game that wasn't a game. And hey, I think that was the game, wasn't it?
It was the game. He could have gone 4 there.
Yeah, and blah 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 blah. But it reminds me of the guy that won the first Columbus 500. You remember that guy's name? You weren't even here. You weren't even born when the first Columbus 500 was run way back in the mid '80s. His name was Drake Olson.
Okay.
And he had a great line after this race, because I remember I did stories on him. Obviously, he just won this new race. He had started up and ran through downtown Columbus. It was actually pretty cool. It was the prototype cars and stuff, and really sweet. And it was in a 962, Porsche 962. But he had this great line. I go, well, what's kind of the reason you've been held back, you think, as a race car driver? Because clearly he was talented. He goes, I never had the luxury of crashing cars, meaning there are some guys who come up, they're ordained, and they've got so much talent that a team owner, takes them under his wing, or a team sponsor, and allows him to go out and what I call investigate the edge. I should be talking about this on my At Speed podcast with Mike Shank, but it allows him to go out and investigate the edge.
Helpful plug.
And sometimes you go over the edge, which means you crash, but you have the luxury of having another car there available to you by your team, because they know you're so good that you will take care of it most of the time, but you will crash occasionally. Some guys don't have that luxury when they're beginning race car drivers, just like some football players, for whatever reason, get kind of caught behind the 8 ball, and it's like almost every chance they get is critical to them proving themselves to someone. A lot of times it's self-inflicted, putting yourself behind that 8 ball. I think a little bit of that might have been Demario from the standpoint of exuding some confidence that maybe he shouldn't have had early, but because, that rubs some people the wrong way. It doesn't rub me the wrong way. I've always liked Demario.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had conversations about him, and of course, Beanie's always liked it. But he's an example of a guy, this could be his spring.
And the situation is now different for him because, as you said, sometimes it's what the player does, and sometimes it's not. Ohio State is an extremely, this goes without saying on this show, it's one of the most talented rosters in college football.
Yeah.
It's not like, so Garrett Wilson did get the chance to find that edge last year when he muffed a punt, and Demario might not have had that in the past. They've gone to make changes, but he's actually got, in terms of special teams, I think he's got pretty a lot of opportunities in a relatively long leash. But on offense, was he going to give you something at tailback that J.K. Dobbins could not, or Mike Weber before that? Probably not. If you were lining him up at H-back and you got to go, way back, and was he going to give you something that Paris Campbell couldn't do? No. If he was out there at wide receiver, was he going to do something that Terry McLaurin couldn't do? No. And he's not got the biggest frame, so running between the tackles is not going to be the strength for him. So you're trying to find these things, and I do think that there is an element with him where you can carve out a very specific role and get him a couple touches, but it's not ever going to be for me where Demario touches it 10 times and gets a rhythm or becomes a regular target on third down or can replace KJ Hill. I just don't think he's that kind of player. But it also doesn't mean that he doesn't have great athleticism or could run away from guys if he got an open field. He could do that.
But he could have the word you haven't used in there, which is what you mean, is opportunities from the standpoint of extended opportunities, because he's always, he didn't show that he was a better running back than J.K. Dobbins, or Mike Weber, and or
Marcus Crowley even last year,
or Master Teague, last year, and Marcus Crowley.
He was behind him. He got into that Maryland game. He was fourth in the pecking order. That was right. The coaching staff has no reason to just put him there because they don't like him. They do like him. They want it.
Right.
But he's not a true running back. And so what you're saying about opportunity now for this spring is also true because there's only 2 healthy scholarship running backs. Okay. Now he's not in the backfield.
But see, this is the conundrum.
That is, okay.
Because you want to use him in that slot. Yeah. Because I'm telling you something. He's a matchup nightmare for most of the teams they're going to play against in that slot, going against whoever that guy is covering him in that slot. Because as we've talked about a million times, the rosters you go against at Ohio State, with a few exceptions, and I'm not even sure Oregon's on this level again yet, but it's getting pretty close. They don't have that third corner that can shut down like a guy who's got quicks. Yeah. Like a Demario McCall, they don't have that. And so and you're right, but they may rob Peter to pay Paul and use him more at running back because, we saw Master Teague the third, number 1 running back going into the spring. But, late in that first preseason practice, we saw him hop off and he didn't come back on.
Yep.
And that's sort of been his cross to bear, is he can't stay healthy, or at least healthy enough to totally prove himself. I think he's got enough video from last year, if you don't count the last couple of games, to show that maybe he should be first out of the gate. But in August, but and Marcus Crowley is missing. You got Steele Chambers sitting there. I mean, I think Steele Chambers has got some potential without a doubt. But then after that, who have you got? Demario McCall might get forced back in there, and really, it's the moment when he probably should be showing what he could do in a slot situation. But if their intent, as we've talked about, I keep saying we've talked about it, because ladies and gentlemen, go back and watch some of our podcasts. But if their intent, like I've talked about, they're loaded. They won't admit it yet, but they know it. They're loaded at wide receiver.
They are.
They're figuring out ways to get Garrett Wilson on the field with 2 or 3 other guys, meaning Garrett Wilson will be on the field no matter what.
Yeah.
But with 2 or 3 other guys, you could put him in the slot. And I thought that Ryan Day said it best. He's got these abilities to go up and make plays. To go up, that would that astounds you when he's out at the X or the Z. But when you put him in the slot, now he's going against, like I guess say, lesser guys, and he is not afraid of going up for balls, of making ridiculous catches. He has that ability, and that is a quarterback's best friend in a giddy-up offense. So I keep looking at this offense going, man, this just shouts, 2018 all over again with a little bit more running.
Well, it makes you wonder, you can go 2 ways with this maybe, with Demario, that, he's not going to crack, in my opinion, a top 6 wide receiver for this group. He's not. Because if you're going to play Garrett Wilson in the slot, that probably means that you think Jackson Smith and Jigba and Julian Fleming, just for starters, are going to be on the outside. And what we saw from practice
you almost get tongue-tied when you name them all, don't you?
Well, absolutely, because you then want to go, G. Scott and Mookie Cooper. They're right.
Chris Olave.
And Olave wasn't even out there yesterday. And Jalen Harris got some good burn with the starting unit out there for the first time. So, what does that mean for Demario? I know we're going to move on from that, but
you left out my man Jameson Williams.
Juiced up Jameson out there with his speed to burn. So why put Demario there? That's an interesting question, because you're so short in the backfield, and you can move him later. He's played wide receiver in the past. It just makes you wonder. And the other part of that, if you're talking about 2018, does that mean that you're possibly going to start putting in some of that stuff where you're running from the slot, from the wide receiver? You
just nailed it. You just put the nail into the wood there, buddy, and then you hit it with your hammer. Because that was a bad analogy, but you know what I'm talking about. Because the thing that sets those kind of guys apart, a good slot guy in my opinion, if you can take like a Jalen Gill or a Demario McCall, who was a running back, and you put him into a receiver position, and he's got enough quicks to get open, but then all of a sudden you've got a running back running amok in the backside of a defense as opposed to a fancy dancy wide receiver. And that's why you do that. Well, but it gives you the options of doing what you're talking about.
And if you're talking about 2018,
Brian Bashnagel,
and even before 2018, okay, so Paris Campbell is the new model for that. And I'm not going to put Demario McCall in a Paris Campbell comparison. I did that last year with Jalen Gill, and I didn't come out looking too hot on that. It didn't happen for him. He's still got that same sort of build and maybe the same athleticism. We'll see when he gets healthy.
But Brian Day, as he pointed out, when J.K. Dobbins is going well and when K.J. Hill is going well, you don't take them out of the game.
No, and you don't have to mess with it. But that's the other part. Like you identify those guys and take advantage of it, because as you're talking about, when Paris Campbell gets the edge, you're not bringing him down. You're not going to find him. You're not going to track him down. When Curtis Samuel got the edge and he got comfortable catching the football, what you can do with him is very, very different. And it makes you so dangerous, because the difference between that 2018 offense that you're talking about, where you're going to air it out and really feature the wide receivers, is that Dwayne Haskins didn't want to run. So if Ohio State finds out that they don't like what they have, they don't think they can give Master Teague 25 carries like J.K. Dobbins, or Steel Chambers doesn't run with the job, or Marcus Crowley continues to struggle with the knee going into fall, well, you still have the threat of the rush with your quarterback.
Correct.
So I would think of nothing that could be more terrifying than bringing back the pop pass that J.T. Barrett used to rack up 1,500 yards and 20 touchdowns with a bunch of guys coming right in front of him, giving him 2 feet, get the edge. Dwayne Haskins, end around stuff, give it to Paris Campbell, let him get the edge. So I think last year that really didn't feature in the offense the way that I thought it would.
No,
and they didn't need to because they had J.K. Dobbins. But in 2020, and we're going to talk about the running backs. We're talking about them today, and we're going to keep talking about them until September rolls around. But the answer to the running game may not be a running back.
Yeah, but here's the thing: that when you've got a Justin Fields, this is the beauty. And we'll get into the quarterbacks here in a second, because I know you're champing at the bit. And I use the term champing. When you're champing at the bit and you're chomping at it.
I'm chomping.
To get to that part. But when you've got Justin Fields, you've got a running back in the backfield. Your other running back doesn't have to be J.K. Dobbins, especially when you've got receivers like they do. You've got the threat of the option with another running back in the backfield. You've got the threat of the option, which could be an option fake jet, boom, take it, And the great thing about that little J.T. Barrett plays, if the guy coming across, I'm not going to name names, drops, just incomplete. Incomplete pass. Well, unless the guy at Birmingham takes a look at it, he may call it, well, there was a chance to catch that ball.
SEC replay booth.
And that guy didn't take full advantage of getting to catch that ball, so it's a fumble.
It was a football move.
But I digress. But the bottom line is, that's what you have. But so before we move on, we're, as we record this, Ohio State's one practice in to 2020 spring practice. They're going to practice again on Wednesday of this week, and then they're going to be gone for a week and a half for spring break.
I think they're going to practice Friday.
They are? Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, well, 3. They'll have 3, and then they'll go for a week and a half, and then have another one. Which is a kind of cool. Kind of gets everybody's feet under them.
Yep.
Alabama used to do that, still does that. I mean, I used to marvel at them being able to do that, and like in Ohio State, having to jam everything into a quarter. You know what I mean? That's what they tried to do. And because of the semester system gives you all kinds of advantages in that regard. But back to what I was saying. So what do you think? Demario got a lot of opportunities in that first practice, which is not, things are scripted.
Yep.
Now, they still got to throw you the ball, but most of the time you're trying to throw the ball to a certain guy in those kind of situations. So I go back to my original premise. They want to see him make it or break it, right?
And, as you said right off the top, like, the spring is not going to be the same for everyone. Paris Johnson, this is your day one. You're going to have urgency and you want to compete for a starting job, but you're going to do it for a long time.
Yeah, and you're going to make mistakes.
For 2 guys in particular that you watched out there that are, well into their careers at Ohio State, they would potentially have a graduate transfer if they needed it. Justin Hilliard on defense.
Wait, let me interrupt. I brought my small mug. Go ahead now.
fueling up for a long podcast.
Yeah, my truck stop mug.
And I'm not suggesting in any way that like these 15 practices are going to be the be all end all, and then they're going to need a Joe Burrow answer at the end. But for Demario McCall and Justin Hilliard, at a minimum, you know that it's your last year in the Ohio State program. It's your last spring, and if both of those guys got a lot of opportunities yesterday.
Yeah.
Justin Hilliard was out there as a starting linebacker. Now, part of that could be Baron Browning's hurt. Part of it is he also played pretty dang good when he got out there at the end of last year.
He produced.
So, these guys, the clock is ticking. And I know we've said that about Demario McCall before, but if Ohio State puts you out there, you run a route, you need to catch the touchdown because, as you know, this isn't the first practice. You're not in Paris Johnson's shoes anymore, or you're not in Jackson Smith and Jigba's shoes anymore.
Yeah.
If you don't produce in this spring, and you've talked about this, you're pretty interested in the way Ryan Day runs spring camp.
Yeah, we'll get in a second.
Yeah. This isn't like, okay, whatever, get to the end of spring and we'll just see what happens.
Yeah.
This is the preparation.
This is get on the train.
So, and if you can't prove that you can do it now,
yeah,
you're not. That opportunity isn't going to come back in August.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about that right now. I mean, I'm stammering because I like the way
I got you off script.
Well, no, I just like the way Ryan Day put it the other day. I mean, we're seeing the more of an NFL kind of approach to spring ball now because you've got a pretty complex off-season workout, call it off-season.
Yeah.
These guys don't call it that. Off-season leading up to spring, and then in between the spring and the opening of preseason camp, they can do so much many more. Where did that come from? So many more things that are allowed now that weren't allowed even 5 or 8,
Absolutely.
10 years ago with the players and stuff, where you can actually work on certain aspects of football that Ryan Day, it was interesting the way he put it is, this was the first day of practice pretty much leading up to the opening game. And the spring game will be practice number 15. The first practice in August will be practice number 16, which means, he's from the NFL, was in the NFL for 2 years, saw that the way they ran things there with the OTAs, et cetera, building toward the point. You've got Gary Combs back after 2 years in the NFL. He understands that process. Greg Madison was in the NFL. He understands it. Brian Hartline was in the NFL. I'm getting redundant here, but I mean, it's just sort of Brian Hartline, the wide receivers coach. It's just interesting to me how that approach is, in essence, they're sort of installing now when it comes to like plays or schemes or concepts of where they want to go with the offense, which may be a little different from a year ago, from 2 years ago. And like I said, you get on the train now, or you can be left behind by the end of spring football. I mean, you can become an afterthought, an emergency player, but you may not become that regular dude.
Yeah, I think, and you have to have enough veteran players that allow you to do it.
Yeah.
Like, that would be the way, Ryan Day wants to structure it every single year.
14 guys showed up for spring ball from the signing class, a record for Ohio State. I mean, that's what we're talking about. Go ahead.
And that's a huge deal for them because that it's going to sound crazy, but that means by August that they'll be, they're not going to be expected to be freshmen. They will be veterans of what the practice looks like.
That sounds crazy.
But you don't have to waste any time in August with with 14 guys. That's a huge percentage of your roster that know where to go on the practice field. You've been to enough of these, as have I, back when all of them were open. Those first couple days of practice, you've got guys basically saying, hey, you got to go over there. There's your position coach. Go to that part of the field, and this is what we're about to do, and holding up flashcards. And now you watch the way Ohio State practices, even in the spring, that clock doesn't ever stop. Period 1, 5 minutes, boom, on to period 2. They know exactly where they have to go. They're on the microphone. They're telling you which part of the field you're doing, what drills you're running.
Don't waste a rep. They don't basically the
They
approach.
Don't waste anything, and I think that's also part of it when you don't have to devote a ton of extra time to. This is just going to be 10 minutes of blocking and hand placement here. Like, it's all incorporated into the drills for them, and it's so seamless the way that it runs, and that goes into your broader picture here that you're talking about, Tim, with practice 1 to practice 16. like the whole thing flows throughout the entire season. There aren't interruptions.
But you're being judged, and the main thing here is you're getting judged every moment. I mean, you're being judged.
Without a doubt.
There's the video cameras. There's how many they have now? Like 15.
I mean, they're videotaping mat drills. They're videotaping the strength and conditioning workouts. Everything, as you said, everything is judged and being graded, and they let you know every single day. They might not put out an official depth chart, but you've got those 3 colors where they're ranking you.
Yeah.
And they're telling you instant feedback all year round. And not only are they grading and giving you something, but the fact that you actually get to do these workouts, you have the 8 hours in the summer per week. You've got all these extra, quality control coaches and people running around even when you can't use a football, and you've got your iPad and they know how much you're studying and extra work you do, even if they can't make you do it. It is 12 months a year for them. And I remember just when I started covering college football, that wasn't the case. You were going to have 2 or 3 weeks, late May and June, or you might even not be in summer school. You're not working out with the team for a few weeks. That didn't always exist.
What do you think about that, though? I mean, what do you think? I mean, I think, even you and Will Crawl and Jeremy Birmingham took a vacation. I mean,
well, they have spring break next week.
Spencer Holbrook's still jealous about it, But, I mean, even y'all took a break from it. Of course, in the middle of your break.
I worked on
in the middle of your break. A couple of players got
I did not stop working.
Got arrested and kicked off the team almost in one fell swoop. But, I mean, what do you think about it? I mean, I don't think you can grip that long, man. I mean, and the thing about it is, if you're really sincere about what you're doing and where you want to get to, not only in a playing standpoint, but like you said, get to the next level. You know that these guys have helped people get to the next level. Anybody who watched the NFL Combine knows how many Ohio State players were there. I mean, so it's possible but how long can you grip like that, man?
Well, it's an incredible commitment, and that's one reason why when we talk about Ohio State players at the NFL Combine, and Spencer and I go there, and I'll be the first to say that I would be biased for them just because I know I've got to know them, watch them develop, grow up. It's not cheering for scarlet and gray colors on them, but the people that what they had to go through at Ohio State.
Devon Hamilton.
And this is just one, one spring practice, the mat drills. But people, I'm not saying this applies to everyone, but we know firsthand the insane amount of commitment that it takes to get through Ohio State's program.
Yeah.
And when I say that it's not the same everywhere, I mean that.
Yeah.
And that does show up when these guys get to the NFL level. So I'm not sure what my point is there, but
here's your point.
How long
your point is as good as you are when you show up at Ohio State, there are guys as gooder, and there are guys that are better. I mean, there are guys, or at least you're equal. I'm looking at right tackle. Nicholas Petit-Frere was one of the great signees of the last several years, last minute signing with Ohio State. Lost the battle in the final analysis, I mean, according to the coaches, for the starting job last year at right tackle, although he did play quite a bit. Brandon Bowen beat him out. And then yesterday, when we're taping this, it was yesterday. He's out there. Brandon Bowen is walking on the sidelines. He's trying to, show the NFL that he deserves a shot. He didn't get invited to the combine.
I was surprised by that.
But there's Brandon Bowen walking, and there's Nicholas Petit-Frere out there, and who's standing next to Nicholas Petit-Frere? Paris Johnson. So the prove yourself, the thinking you've arrived aspect hardly ever comes into play at a place like Ohio State or Alabama or Clemson, unless you're just a freak over the top kind of player, like maybe Chase Young was.
Yeah.
Definitely a freak over the player top, not maybe, but you never can relax because they're looking for the next great player at your position, and this is what was interesting yesterday. I'm looking out there and I saw the number one offensive line standing off to the side after like a couple of reps, and there's Josh Myers with his new buddy at left guard, Harry Miller. As I predicted, they're going to try to figure out a way to get Harry Miller on the field because
he's going to be there.
I mean, yesterday when Ryan Day was asked about him, he didn't effuse like he did the year before when they signed Harry Miller. But Harry Miller's a hell of a player, and And then you've got Thayer Munford returning at left tackle.
Yeah.
You've got right guard. Wyatt Davis might be the best guard in the country.
I think he will
Correct?
be. Yep.
And then right tackle, Nicholas Petit-Frere. But then there's this hulking freshman who wants to make a name for himself right out of the gate, has left no secrets on the table that he wants to try to become a starter. But I looked at that. That was that's why when you look at Ohio State in 2020, you know the guys that they lost. But see, as a coach and even as a media guy, you shouldn't really spend too much time on who's not there anymore, because that's not college football is about who's next.
It's not going to change.
But having that offensive line back the way they do, and with the guys stepping up, a couple of 5 stars, Harry Miller, Nicholas Petit-Frere are the next guys up, and they're 5 stars, and there's a 5-star standing behind Nicholas Petit-Frere. And then you look and running, I think second team yesterday, I may be wrong, was Enoch Vimahi at left guard.
That's what I was going to say.
And that guy, was a kind of a late joiner to the class, a year ago. He's determined he's not, the way we understand it's not going to go on his missionary mission, and is going to stick around and play football. Man, he's chomping at the bit to play left guard. It's just amazing what they've got going.
Well, and it's pretty remarkable if looking at that offensive line to compare that to when I first started covering this team in 2012 and got here shortly after Urban. Every year, the first 7 that I was here, they were 1 injury away on the offensive line. It took them a very long time to get that depth chart and the recruiting sorted out to where you had this situation. It did not happen overnight, not even close. And you look at the last couple of years and now building into this will be the deepest, most versatile offensive line that I've covered at Ohio State. And it's one of the most versatile and athletic that I've ever seen. And that is a mouthful, but I think it's definitely true, because there's an opportunity. Brandon Bowen has said this himself, and Jonah Jackson said it last week at the Combine. They could be much better than last year because of what you just said with Harry Miller. Enoch Vimahi, I've talked to multiple people inside the Woody who believe that this guy is an NFL draft pick.
Yeah.
He's put on, and that part of that was if he would stay and be committed to football, and they didn't pressure him on that missionary decision one way or the other, but he saw what could happen for him and what it would mean, and I think he's put on close to 40 pounds in the last year. And that's all muscle on this dude. Make no mistake about it. The 2 guys that you talked about at right tackle, when you have both of them were rated number 1 in the country coming out of high school at their position. Both 5 stars, both number 1. They're going head-to-head for a position. They took a project on in DeJuan Jones.
Yeah.
And he's out there at left tackle at 6'8", 360 pounds plus. And
looking a hell of a lot better than he was 8 months ago.
Oh, my gosh. The footwork is like he's been –
crazy.
I've sat here before and talked about the struggles from Greg Studrawa and the misses. Burma's talked about the recruiting misses that led to some of the situation where it took until 2019, 2020 to get here. That guy's done a hell of a job developing.
I never got sucked into that because I always thought Greg had it going. I mean, it's what are you working with? You know what I mean? And you're right. I mean, sometimes you got to get something going to make it attractive, which is.
Yeah,
man, people have different ways of attracting people. I mean, of attracting talent, and definitely he's got something going there. I mean, it's undeniable.
I think that I asked him about this at the Fiesta Bowl, and he didn't shy away from the fact that 2018 unit was not his finest work, and not everybody's going to be perfect all the time. We all make mistakes, and in 2018, whether it was not being able to incorporate the RPO blocking scheme or get the aggression that he wanted, or maybe even making some wrong personnel choices when you had Wyatt Davis that at the end of the year was clearly ready to go and needed an injury to get into the lineup when Demetrius Knox gets hurt. I mean, mistakes happen. And I think that he took a long, hard look at that. He realized what he needed to do, not only in the room with the talent that he had and maximizing that, but also, hey, I need to be committed a little bit better to this recruiting process. We're missing out on guys in Ohio. He took a bunch of heat for Jackson Carman.
Yeah.
And you put him on that unit, then things look different. Now, they wound up with Petit-Frere anyway, but
here's the thing. Obviously Jackson Carman didn't make a bad decision. I mean, He's pretty damn good. Turn on the video from even the Fiesta Bowl, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But I don't get too wrapped up in. I get wrapped up in multiple recruiting losses, but not. It's kind of hard to say but not individual. Of course, individuals are when you have about 8 of those, it becomes multiple. But sometimes guys don't want to go. Like Jordan Hicks didn't want to go to Ohio State. He wanted to go to Texas. What do you say about that? Even though he was inside the boundaries, the
radius.
Yeah, but Jackson Carman clearly could have played anywhere and probably been a first-year starter, and that was one that got away.
And I don't want to. That's Berm's got his own talking stuff that he can do to dive into that. But I think even that year, you just look. We don't need to go back and relitigate 2018. But the Michael Jordan move didn't work. It took too long to maybe get Wyatt Davis.
But that's one that they even talked about later. I think even Urban Meyer talked about that later about second guessing because Josh Myers was kind of ready near the end of the year. But they wouldn't make the move, because things were still going pretty damn good.
Yeah, I get all of that. So my point was to say that I think that Greg Studrawa deserves a lot more credit than maybe he's getting. If he's going to be blamed and you wanted to fire him at the end of 18, you also have to recognize the value that he's bringing to it right now. And why is that important? Because he's going to have to make hard decisions between Harry Miller and Enoch Vimahi. He's going to have, if Paris Johnson continues on this track, and that's one day without full pads on, without actually having to try and block Tyreek
I was going to get to that.
Or Zach Harrison.
You just preempted me. I was going to get to that.
But it's still significant. He has to still make the decision to say, Ryan, I want Paris Johnson to get some of the reps with the ones on day one. He's got it. They have to make. You said that with the script. They chose to do that. He wasn't out there by default or luck, or they flipped a coin.
Just jump it in there.
You flipped a coin and you get the next rep. They chose to have him out there. They believe that he can compete for the starting job. Yeah. So you have to get that right. You have, and by the way, that doesn't mean that Thayer Munford is guaranteed anything.
No.
Or anybody else. You have, as you've said, and you've hammered home on your podcast here, if it's practice 1 and practice 16 is in August, the evaluation is now. So he's got that opportunity, but Greg Studrawa is going to have to manage this correctly. You can't get it wrong, but you also have fewer opportunities to get it wrong because you've recruited so well.
Yeah, but here's the way I would manage it. I'd play those guys. I mean, I would play if Enoch Vimahi shows that he's ready. Mm-hmm. I play him some. I mean, I play Paris Johnson at right tackle. I mean, specials, and they will in those early games. Well, maybe not at Oregon. We'll see how that goes. I mean, they may be the perfect matchup at Oregon, but Harry Miller's got to play too. You don't want Harry Miller to sit 2 straight years without becoming a regular because he will slide over and be your Remington contender in 2021. Correct?
Yep.
There's no doubt about it in my mind. I mean, I've watched that guy move around and stuff, and then you think about his smarts, and you put all this ability and then put the smarts on top of it. You've got quite a computer walking around out there, a robot. I think that's what they'd call it. A robot moves moving parts with a computer running it. But I digress. That's way off the topic. But the bottom line is those guys have got to play. But I want Paris Johnson because Paris Johnson, this is barring injury, this is a 3-year deal. Yes. I mean, and it's probably the same. I would think it might be the same with Harry Miller. We'll see where it goes. We thought Josh Myers and Wyatt Davis may leave. They didn't.
Yeah.
So never definitely presuppose that something's going to happen, but the possibilities are there, and you want to get the most out of them. As I told you before, Sean Spring said when he left after his 4th year, but it was his junior year. I didn't tell them to redshirt me my freshman year. They did that, So you better use them while you got them. And more in college football, that's what you're seeing because the guys who get unhappy may be in the transfer portal. But, boy, the more guys you can play, the more – and they can be on a team that's doing things like this team has the possibility of doing again, just like they did last year, the happier they are and the more they can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, and that's the other reason that when we have this conversation about the rushing attack, almost anybody I feel like you could put out there behind Josh Myers, Wyatt Davis, this offensive line, they're going to move
against
people.
most defenses.
Yeah, but they're going to move almost everybody they face. Those guys are both first-round picks in my mind, and again, maybe I'm going too strongly to bat for them, but what I watched from them last year was remarkable. I think that if people wait too long to pull the trigger on Jonah Jackson, they're missing the boat, because that guy actually led the team in knockdowns last year. As Spencer,
watch the videos, I like to say,
as Spencer wrote about last week. So, but that's when you pair that offensive line with a quarterback like Justin Fields, who's going to test everything, every part of the field that a defense could have to defend. I mean, it almost doesn't matter who you put at running back, because that offense is gonna be really good.
Hey, last thing before we go, and
you said I was champing.
Yeah. I think I even forgot what I was champing about. I'll talk about something else now. I think this is what I was champing about, though. But Justin Fields. Yeah. I mean, we talked about this in our post-practice. What do you call that?
Practice report.
Yeah.
Brought to you by Byers Auto.
Brought to you by Byers Auto. But, by the way, it was cool standing next to George Kaufman at practice.
He's a great guy.
No, I've always liked him, man. He and I go a little ways back. It's pretty cool. But I digress. Justin Fields, the difference. Man. I mean, and think about how good he was last year till he hurt his knee, and he was still pretty damn good after that.
Yeah, he was.
But just think about how good he was and what we thought about him in that first practice in spring. Talk about getting on the train and riding, because he looked, when he was just standing there, he looked like a 5-star, and when he was running around a little bit, but he didn't look like a 5-star running the offense, because, you immediately, what you get to see, you immediately make judgments on guys, which is, what's that old line? You only have one chance to make a first impression. And so you're going, man, he isn't anywhere near the passer that Dwayne Haskins was. Well, they hope he can run. And then you saw him just evolve as the season went on. Forget about from August to September to November, his ability as a passer, just if you were paying attention, got better and better and better, which tells you what a great athlete he is, because he's seeing and then doing, or he's being instructed and then doing. There are very few people, and who was that who talked about that late in the year last year? Was it Mike Yursich, or it was one of the offensive coaches, Kevin Wilson maybe, who talked about how what's cool about that guy is you can talk with him conceptually about something, and then he can go out and do it.
Right.
There aren't very many of those people out there, ladies and gentlemen. And then just to watch him in the first day of spring practice 2020, how in command he was, how he looked like, when you're growing up and you've got a neighborhood team, and he's what I call the Mikey Fuqua. That was a guy on our neighborhood team in Alabama, or my big brother Ben when we moved to Texas, the guy you wanted first
draft pick, any game.
Yeah. Now, I was always picked by my big brother Ben, because they put me at quarterback because they know I didn't like to get hit, and I could get rid of the ball, and I was pretty accurate. But you know what I mean? There are different reasons why people are. But he looks like that guy that the team can rally around, and I'm not sure he had that aura about him a year ago.
He didn't, and I was thinking about that yesterday, because I couldn't shake it. I was like, man, it's really only been 12 months and 14 months just in Columbus, and that's what he looks like, because we got all these questions from March to August. Why is Ryan Day not naming him the starter?
Yeah.
And for me, I was like, I know he's going to be the starter. Justin Fields knows he's going to be the starter. Ryan Day knows he's going to be the starter. Everybody around knew that he was a 5-star for a reason.
You want him to know he's going to be him. Go ahead.
But it was easy to understand why he didn't say it, because if you had just the 2-3 practices that we got to watch, one like yesterday, you knew that he wasn't in command. You knew that he wasn't able to go up and tell Chris Olave, hey, this route needed to go here, or go point out stuff to the receivers. He wasn't able to do that stuff, and so he wasn't the clear-cut, defined leader. He was the best athlete. As you said, he's your number 1 draft pick for a reason, and you want to win with him. But he hadn't to be the starter at Ohio State.
He hadn't grabbed the team yet.
That takes time to become that.
Yeah.
And now you watch him, and everything he does, it's at a different level. And sometimes it's hard to describe that when you watch it and it's an open practice and you're trying to put that into a podcast or trying to put it into a story, like what you see. There's just he's very different, and JT had this as well, this leadership quality that is hard to write about and describe to people, like why he never lost the starting job, because there was a different feel, and he won games and everyone respected him. And I'm not saying that wasn't the case last March with Justin because people respected his athleticism, but you watch the command now, and when he's just running a simple drill or throwing it over that net that he couldn't get that drill down right last year. Everyone's talking about, well, the accuracy's not there. Well, because we saw him be inaccurate with what they were asking him to do.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah. You don't want him walking up to the dunking machine now if you're sitting on the stool.
No,
that's for sure.
He's knocking you down.
Yeah, the bottom line is, like you're talking about, it's just basically he's taking command. But the way you take command is the guys that are around you know that you have the answers. Mm-hmm. And not only that you have the answers, but that you will lead the charge if, in fact, you're going up San Juan Hill. And he's that's what he looks like now. He looks like that guy. The question is, and that's what I was champing at the bit to get to, is who's going to be. You got to have that backup dude. Gunnar Hoke, this is his opportunity. There's no denying that C.J. Stroud, of those other three, and I thought Jack Miller looked pretty good, but C.J. Stroud, man, getting him late in this recruiting class, it could be sort of like picking up Justin Fields in the transfer portal. Who knows where it's going, but it looks like a pretty good pickup.
Yeah, I tried to temper last week with Gunnar, talking about Gunnar Hoke and how
I know you did. Well,
but
I'm not going to. Hey, I don't see. That's like when everybody was down on Demario. I don't like to get down on guys because when they get their opportunity is when they may rise and shine. So I don't ever. I think all these guys are out there trying their best, and given a situation, you never know who's going to step up and take it by the bit. But there is no doubt about C.J. Stroud and what he brings to the program.
So, I wanted to temper that because he has a lot of the offense to learn, and Gunnar Hoke now knows that. And you also don't want to be too down because we saw Justin Fields struggle on day one last year, his first practice at Ohio State. So Jack Miller, I'm going to be completely fair and leave the book open. But his first practice, he did some of that same struggling, if we're being completely honest.
Right.
For somebody going through their first practice at Ohio State as the quarterback, C.J. Stroud did that about as well as you possibly could have.
Yeah, and he wasn't flawless, ladies and gentlemen.
He wasn't, but knowing where you have to be on that learning curve and grading it a little bit that way.
Yeah.
C.J. Stroud came in ready to play for day one. Now, will he be perfect on Wednesday or Friday? Maybe he won't be. But for a first impression, as you're talking about, that made me believe that C.J. Stroud has a leg up to potentially be, and he could be ready to be the backup by August. Now, it's not fair to also compare him to how Justin Fields went from day one to September, and expecting C.J. Stroud to do the same is not really realistic.
Yeah.
But if he's going to get significantly better from March 2nd until September 1st, look out, because this kid has the ability to run. That touchdown to Demario McCall was on the money, and the first time he's running team tempo drill, and he goes down and leads to a touchdown. Those are the things that stick in your mind.
No, what you're trying to say is he hitched his wagon to Demario McCall. Yeah. That's what you're trying to say.
That's
what you're trying to say.
Don't put those words in my mouth.
That's what you're champing at the bit trying to say.
I'm going to spit that bit if I'm being honest.
I want to tell you something, though. This is what's interesting. We'll go after this. But that's why the spring game, the battles for the backup quarterback job at Ohio State, that's a major position in college football if you've been paying attention over the years, and it's up for grabs, without a doubt. Yep. That's why the spring game's going to be interesting. The secondary, the guys that were missing most of spring, if Cam Brown, they really need him, I think, to come back and get in the flow a little bit. Josh Proctor, I think they had a handle on him at the end of the year, but he needs reps like everybody else does. Yep. We'll see where that goes, but they're filling in the blanks there. And we'll get into that in our next podcast. But I think the spring game, with all these young receivers all wanting to be, because all four of them aren't going to be regulars. There are going to be a couple of them that jump out, and just, in that first practice, man, Julian Fleming jumped out to me just like I thought he would. But as Ryan Day said, all four of them did something that flashed. And Jackson Smith-Njigba, he was catching everything thrown, and he even caught one pass that would have been out of bounds in Canada. I can't remember who threw it, but he came into into all the media that was standing there didn't bat an eye and caught a ball over his shoulder.
Yeah.
Remember that? It was like 7 yards out of bounds. Yeah. But he never took his eye off the ball. Kind of like Willie Mays when he ran into the fence, you know what I mean? Either the fence stops him or he catches the ball. And that guy, we haven't even – let's save that for our next deal because the depth, the quality that they brought in at wide receiver, and now we got to watch them actually practice the young guys with the older guys.
Well, you know,
give some people a little bit of a taste and we'll go.
You know, while you're talking about the spring game and these competitions over 15 practices with the wide receivers and these quarterbacks, you're going to get probably extra reps because you just can't work on the run game.
Right.
You're not going to give Master Teague and Steel Chambers double the reps just because it's spring and you want to do it.
They never do in the spring game.
You have to.
That's where people get hurt, by the way.
You have to. You're not only focusing on what you want the offense to look like, but you still have to structure practice based on the personnel you have. You're not just going to bang your head into the wall trying to run with a couple walk-ons or a guy who used to be, a former defensive back. If you need to sort out what C.J. Stroud, Jack Miller, and Gunnar Hoke can do, and you want to zip through a learning curve with Julian Fleming and Jackson Smith and Jigba and G. Scott and Mookie Cooper, and then you're gonna throw the football all spring.
Yeah,
and we're gonna find out a lot about what those receivers and these young quarterbacks look like.
And this is nothing new anyway. I mean, get Rex Kern or one of those quarterbacks, Corny Green or somebody to tell you how much they practice throwing the ball with Woody. And then they get to the games, they throw it 6 times.
Well, we know that this coach will throw it.
Yeah, this guy will throw it. He's in it to win it, so to speak, or in it to wing it. And but, ladies and gentlemen, that's the Tim May podcast, and I appreciate you tuning in. And, we were a little bit deep and heavy on what's going on with Ohio State football because that's what I cover. That's what Boston, you know him as Austin Ward, covers.
I bet they don't mind.
Yeah, and I think the hardcores out there, they want to know what we think, what we're seeing behind the scenes, people we see rising, et cetera. We're going to get Spencer Holbrook in with us on our next cast, though. Maybe we'll have a threesome there sitting here talking about things, about what's going on because he pays attention too. And but until next time, this is Tim May on behalf of Austin Ward. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe below to get the latest videos from Lettermen Row.
We got Letterman Live, we've got the practice report, we got rapid reaction. Hey, and we got Buckeye IQ with Zach Bourne.
For sure. We got recruiting breakdowns with Berm. We got whatever you need. Ohio State football and Ohio State athletics, we've got you covered here at Lettermen Row.